Work is the quantity of energy transfer when something, an object or a person, etc., experiences movement. Power is the rate of which that work can be completed. Today, I'm going to demonstrate how we can calculate power and work in a real-life situation. Here's a video of me running up and down a flight of stairs. I'm going to calculate the maximum power I developed while quickly walking up the flight of stairs, as well as exactly how much work this energy transformation took. The work is equal to mass, multiplied by gravitational acceleration times change in height. To calculate the total power I developed during this motion, I took the value we calculated from the work equation and divided that by the time it took me to reach the top of the stairs walking quickly. So time for the big reveal. How much power was I able to generate walking up this flight of stairs? Okay, so now we have a value, but what does that value really mean? When I got to thinking about it, I don't really have anything to compare that to into my head because I don't really know what a watt of energy is. So I decided to do some research. Given that we're all on our computers so often with COVID, I decided to look in how much a desktop power a desktop computer actually needs. So when a desktop computer is turned on, it needs about 60 to 250 watts per hour depending on what kind of systems you're running. If the desktop computer is on sleep mode, it only needs 1 to 6 watts per hour. Therefore, it would take me about 8,298, almost 8,299 repetitions to generate enough power to power a laptop for an hour. Wow. I can feel my calves hurting even just thinking about that many repetitions. I think it's really important that we have this kind of context to compare our results to, especially as I really knew very little about the subject going into this. Therefore, I wasn't very knowledgeable on the subject, and I didn't really have anything to compare my personal results to. Now that I have this comparison, I feel like I can understand my results a lot better than I could before. When a car crashes at a high speed, what stops the frame from completely buckling and the front end from being pushed up into the passenger compartment? It's simple: crumple zones. Crumple zones are designed to absorb some of the energy of the impact so that it is not experienced solely by the passenger of the car. But how does it do this? Well, the answer is pretty simply physics. Let's look at an example. In this experiment, I launched two model cars with the same velocity at a wall, and the only difference between these two cars was one was built to have a crumple zone while the other was not. The first thing I found was that the length of the car was 0.05 meters and the mass of the car was 0.069 kgs. The time taken to collide differed from 4.637 seconds for the car without the crumple zone and 5.020 seconds for the car with a crumple zone. Then I used all of the data I had already extrapolated to find the force and the impulse, so I knew that force was equal to V times m divided by t, so therefore for the car without the crumple zone, the force was 0.059 approximately, while the car with a crumple zone had a force of approximately 0.0419. Likewise, the impulse was 0.2769 for the car without a crumple zone and 0.21045 for the car with a crumple zone. With all this information in mind, we can conclude that the car with a crumple zone, because it had a longer collision time, the force that the car experienced during the collision was less than the force experienced by the car without the crumple zone. And likewise, the impulse on the car with the crumple zone was smaller than the impulse of the car without the crumple zone. Therefore, I conclude that cars with crumple zones are safer than cars without crumple zones because crumple zones extend the time of collision, which therefore lessens the force enacted on the car during the collision. I want to wrap this portion of the video up by going over how we derive the impulse-momentum equation. So first, let's start with momentum. So momentum is a quantity that describes an object's resistance to stopping. It's also kind of a moving inertia. And impulse, which is the second part of the theory, is a quantity that describes the effect of a net force acting on an object, a kind of moving force, so as to say. So therefore, when we put these two concepts together, we get the idea of the impulse momentum theorem. The impulse momentum theorem states that the change in momentum of an object equals the impulse applied to it. The next question I chose to explore was, what are other ways we can reduce the force experienced by passengers in a car crash or collision? Well, airbags can also increase the time the passenger's body is in motion until stopping, therefore also making the change in momentum less extreme and the force felt by the passenger less extreme. Airbags spread out the force of the impact of the collision across the top half of your body. This is another way the duration of the impact time is increased, and therefore the force experienced by the passenger is lessened. Seatbelts absorb the kinetic energy of the collision as the seatbelt material stretches. Seatbelts sit across the passenger's body as they spread out the force, so it is less concentrated and therefore less extreme. All of this car crash talk kind of freaks me out, so I decided to do some research on how you can ensure your safety when you travel in a car. The first thing that was really emphasized was the emphasis on getting the newest version of a car you can get, because it seems intuitive, but the newest version of the car you can get has the newest safety features, and today's safety features are so much different and so much more advanced than even the safety features of, say, 5 years ago. Second big point is always buckle up. I know it sounds cheesy, but seatbelts do save lives, as we talked about before, and it's just a really smart, really easy thing you can do to ensure your safety when you're traveling in a car. And my last big car safety tip is check, check, check. Here's a list of things that you should be checking pretty regularly, and also make sure to go get your car serviced whenever your car indicates you to do so. This is really important just to make sure your car is the safest it can be.